Welcome to episode 39 of the Rescued by Dragons fantasy podcast, Tales of the Brunch Club. My name is Brian Messmer, and I'm not only your storyteller, but the dungeon master behind the homebrew Dungeons & Dragons campaign this story is based on. Please join me as I tell the tale of how my players and the dice changed my perfectly laid plans. But first, a quick recap. In episode 38, the Brunch Club scouted the gnoll encampment to the north and discovered it fully fortified. Alora merged her consciousness with Copper's and snuck within earshot of the camp. She learned the gnoll shaman was performing a ritual to turn an ordinary gnoll into a super gnoll called a flind. On the way back to Wheaton, they encountered a larger-than-average white goose who tried to steal Jory's spatula. They feared it might be Rajat, wild-shaped into goose form, and attacked it. All of their attacks either failed to hit or did no damage. The goose vanished before they could attempt to attack it again. And now, episode 39, Fist-Sized Balls. The Brunch Club sat in Saberhagen's cozy upstairs study. Joy tossed bits of cooked fish to Saberhagen, as the rest of the group discussed what to do about the gnolls to the north. The group agreed they could not simply sit and wait for Wheaton to be attacked again. "We could try and find Chad and Thad," Salas suggested. "They'd want us to pay them," said Alora. "We could offer to share the loot." "Even if these guys are that good, 2 more people isn't going to make a difference against a bunch of gnolls of Flind and Rajat," the ranger continued. "We could start a rumor and say there's treasure in the cave," Diesa quipped. "Maybe a few groups of adventurers would go up there looking for it and thin their ranks a bit." "Sounds promising," said Drusilla, "but how would we start that rumor?" Alora chuckled. "That sounds like the perfect job for Salas and Diesa." Salas sat up. She enthusiastically suggested, "Diesa and I could go to a thieves' bar and pretend to have a quiet conversation about the treasure and how to get it." "But it wouldn't really be that quiet," said Diesa, finishing the thought for her. Guys," Joy interjected, "as promising as that sounds, we'd be sending people to their probable death, and I don't feel good about killing innocent thieves." The group sat in a deflated silence. Saberhagen looked at Joy and cleared his throat, indicating that the halfling should resume feeding him. "Oh, sorry," Joy said to him. "I was just thinking." His voice trailed off as he rummaged through his pack. He withdrew the map of the lost treasure of Bon Lodier and placed it next to Saberhagen. "You could scry on someone who's touched that, right?" "I could," Saberhagen confirmed, then added, "but a description of the person would help immensely." Joy described Captain Santiago and his ship, the Rod's Curse, to the wizard in every detail he could remember. "Jenkins," Saberhagen called out to his familiar. The sound of 2 quick hand claps came from the other room. "Bring me my scrying bowl." Saberhagen stared into the glowing water that filled the shallow bowl. "I see him," he said. "The captain and his ship are in a cove just to the north of Elnor." An uncharacteristically evil grin formed on Joy's face. "I think I have a plan," he said. "Why don't we give the Rod's Curse an anonymous tip that the halfling and the map they seek are in a fortified cave to the northwest of Elnor? Let's have them take out some gnolls for us." "How do you know the gnolls won't just kill them instead?" asked Salas. "Who cares?" answered the halfling. "The worst case scenario is the gnolls kill the pirates. Best case scenario is they wipe out each other." "I thought you didn't want to see innocent people get killed," Drusilla said. Joy's face fell into a dark expression. The images of strangers and friends left to burn and drown flickered through his mind. "They're not innocent," he stated with conviction. "I like this plan," exclaimed Diesa. "I'm all in." Diesa forged a note she was confident would bait the greedy pirates. They sent it to the ship via carrier pigeon. In exchange for the promise of more fish, Saberhagen agreed to scry on Santiago once a day to track the pirates' progress, to see if they even took the bait. Drusilla spent the following morning trimming and watering her plants. The crop of catnip she started cultivating in the windows of her alchemy lab was growing nicely. Once she was finished, she took a moment to appreciate the magnificent view of the harbor the top of the former lighthouse afforded her. That was when she saw it. "Guys, get up here now, you need to see this," she shouted down to her companions. The rest of the Brunch Club rushed up to the top floor. They followed Drusilla's gaze out into the harbor. "Holy fuck," said Diesa. "Is that," Laura began. "The Rod's curse," finished Jory. "Yeah, it is. What the hell are they doing here?" "They probably looked at a map and realized this was the shortest way to get to the gnoll camp by land," said Alora. "What do we do?" Jory asked. There was a panic in his voice. "Nothing," Drusilla said calmly. "We stay here and watch them." They watched the Rod's curse glide into the harbor, drop its sails, and tie up at the main dock. The ex-Navy ship dwarfed the small fishing boats around it. With military precision, the crew unloaded a cannon with 2 large wheels fixed to each side. 15 pirates disembarked and marched into town, led by Captain Santiago. From their perch above the harbor, they watched the captain and 2 pirates go into Druin's blacksmith's shop while the rest milled about outside with the cannon. After a few minutes, the 3 men emerged from Druin's. The pirates marched through Wheaton's north gate and into the forest. "What now?" Jory asked. "Let's go see what they wanted with Druin," said Drusilla. "There's still about 5 or 10 pirates left on that ship," Jory said worriedly. "Maybe I should stay here." "No problem," Diesa reassured him. "We'll just get you back to being geriatric." The Brunch Club, with Jory disguised as an old halfling, stood in Druin's blacksmith shop. "They seemed pretty odd to me," Druin admitted to them after being asked about his visit from the 3 strangers. "Usually when ships like that come in, they want things repaired, fittings, turnbuckles, that kind of thing. These guys just wanted grape and chain shot." "Grape and chain shot?" asked Drusilla. "Grape shot is a lot of little iron balls that get shot from a cannon at once," Joy explained. "It's used for killing soldiers on deck. Chain shot is 2 fist-sized balls connected by a chain. They're for bringing down masts or tearing through rigging and sails." "You said fist-sized balls," snickered Alora. Salas and Diesa snickered too. "Did you sell that stuff to them?" Drusilla asked. "Only the grape shot. I have to make the chain shot. They said they'd be back in 3 or 4 days to pick it up." "Man, ship battles sound terrifying," said Salas as they left Druin's and headed to the sunspot. "Yeah," said Joy softly. "They're in the forest, heading in the direction you told them," said Saberhagen as he stared into the scrying bowl. "They are moving at a steady pace, but the cannon is slowing them down." "Are they saying anything?" Drusilla asked. "No. It took us almost 2 days to get there, and we didn't have a cannon," observed Salas. "They'll get there by the end of tomorrow, and they'll wait till sunrise to attack, if they're smart," said Alora with confidence. Joy agreed. "They were part of the Drazanian Navy before they became pirates. They're well trained." The group thanked Saberhagen, gave him some fish, and went to get brunch. "We've got a couple days to kill. What should we do?" Salas asked as they finished their after-brunch mimosas. "I should brew some healing potions," Drusilla said. "I want to see what kind of fish I can catch from our lighthouse. Maybe do some crabbing," said Jory. "I want to knit some catnip bags for Saberhagen," said Alora. "I'm going to do nothing," said Diesa, but she was lying. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She smiled inwardly and downed her mimosa. Diesa sat alone in the common room on the first floor of the lighthouse. She hadn't forgotten the first day they met Jory. Specifically, how he'd embarrassed her by not only evading her attack, but also kicking her in the face, all while pouring a perfect glass of mead and handing it to her in a frying pan used as a tray. This was finally the day she was going to get back at him. She rummaged through her pack and found the length of rope she was looking for. She arranged it in a circle on the floor just outside the kitchen. After rigging the rest of the snare trap, she covered it with dust to make it blend into the stone floor. She baited it with a bottle of mead, right in the center. "What you doing?" asked Salas when she entered the lighthouse with the Laura and Copper. "I'm going to catch Jory in a snare trap," she answered, matter-of-factly. "Why?" "Why not?" Diesa said. "I want to see this," said Drusilla from the steps she had just descended. They all sat in the common room, drinking mead and wine, waiting for Jory to return. Several glasses later, they were all feeling pretty tipsy when Jory walked in the door. He was carrying 5 very large fish. "Hi, I got us dinner," he said, and headed straight for the kitchen. "Oh, look, one of you left your mead here," he called out as he stepped gingerly in and out of the trap. Salis, Drusilla, and Alora tried not to laugh as Diesa angrily got up to grab herself the mead off the floor. They burst out laughing when Diesa accidentally set off her own trap. It closed around her arm, but the snare was not well tied and slipped harmlessly off the rogue's arm instead of hauling her up. Nice trap, Diesa, laughed Alora. Salis and Drusilla were laughing too hard to speak. I'd like to see you do better, Diesa snapped at the ranger. 5 silver says I do, challenged Alora. I want in on this, Drusilla and Salis exclaimed. The next morning, Jory got up early to see if he could catch some of the crabs that lived near the shore of their island. While he was out, Alora set her snare trap up outside the lighthouse door. She left the door open so the 4 women could see what happened from their seats in the common room. It wasn't long before they saw Jory running up the path to the lighthouse. He was hopping and twisting and flailing his arms. As he got closer, they could see he had crabs clinging to him with their claws. There were a couple on his clothes, one was grabbing his hair, another was clamped on his big toe, causing the erratic hopping. He was waving one hand, trying to get a crab off his finger, and juggling another in his other hand while trying to keep it from pinching him. He was running so fast he jumped right over Alora's snare trap. "Thanks for leaving the door open for me," he said cheerfully as he bounded into the kitchen. Alora folded her arms and huffed as Salis and Drusilla laughed. "See? Not so easy, is it?" smiled Diesa. Jory prepared some of the crab meat for Saberhagen, and they went back to the Sunspot for their daily pirate update. The feline wizard was waiting for them in his upstairs sanctum. The scrying bowl was already prepared. The glowing water coalesced into an image, and Saberhagen described what he saw. The pirates were making progress and seemed to be on schedule. Saberhagen heard one of the pirates grumble, "Be easier without the cannon." "Yeah, a bit overkill if you ask me," said another. A quiet but gruff and authoritative voice interrupted their chatter. "If you underestimate your enemy, you don't get another chance to overestimate them." Captain Santiago snarled at them. There was no more talking after that. With nothing else to do but wait until tomorrow, they headed back to their island. As they walked up the path towards the lighthouse, Drusilla slowed down slightly, letting Jory pass. She motioned for the other 3 women to slow down with her. "I put a tripwire inside the door," she whispered to them. They stayed back far enough to make sure Jory would enter first. He pulled open the door and turned around. "What are you guys doing all the way back there?" he asked. His act of turning while stepping threw off his stride, and he tripped on the step to the threshold. The nimble halfling managed to regain his balance by hopping on one leg, right over Drusilla's tripwire. "No silver for Drusilla," Diesa sang softly to the group as Salis and Alora laughed. While Jory cooked up some fish in the kitchen, Drusilla crafted some more potions in her alchemy lab on the top floor. Salis, Diesa, and Alora sat in the common room. Alora knitted catnip bags for Saberhagen, while Copper slept next to her side. Salis napped on the couch with Pip snuggled up against her arm. Diesa sat at the table, tying a snare trap over and over again, trying to figure out where she went wrong. The calmness of the afternoon was broken by the sound of a loud commotion coming from the docks. It was loud enough to wake up Copper and Salis, but not Pip. So Salis tucked him in the hood of her robe as they climbed the stairs to the top of the lighthouse. From Drusilla's alchemy lab, they had a clear view down to the deck of the Rod's Curse. All of the sailors were trying, in vain, to catch a large, white goose that was waddling quickly away from them, just fast enough to stay out of their grasp. They noticed the rigging was cut in several places. Several sails had long gashes in them. One sail and yard arm were completely off the mainmast and strewn across the bow of the deck. A woman in a tricorn hat stood up by the helm and shouted at the crew. "What are you doing? Get him! It's only a goose!" she screamed with commanding fury. But, one of the crew stammered, he's got a knife!" Upon closer inspection, the Brunch Club noticed the goose did indeed have a dagger clutched in its beak. Without hesitation, they ran down the steps to their own little dock and jumped into the rowboat. On the way, Jory stopped in the kitchen to get something. Diesa and Drusilla rowed them toward the pirate ship. Jory and Salis called out, "Here, goose! Here, goose!" "Honk!" Alora called out loudly. The goose turned and looked at them. Even though it was running away, it still managed to sidestep and evade the pirates' lunges. It hopped up on the gunwale and jumped down into the water. "Tell it I have food," Jory said to Alora. "I don't speak goose, you idiot," Alora said. "But you honked," said Jory. He turned his attention back to the goose. Hey, I have the spatula! Joy held up the spatula the goose had previously taken. He waved it in the air. You want it? The goose rapidly swam up to the boat, cocked its head, and looked at Joy. Do you need help? Are you cursed or something? Joy asked. The goose took the spatula. They watched the goose turn and swim away. Jason noticed the crew of the Rod's Curse was watching the goose too. Hey boys, she shouted up to them. Do you like to party? The pirates looked at each other, then at the fiery first mate that stood by the helm. No, we're busy. Come on, why don't you invite us up? We've got mead, Diesa insisted. What are you doing? Joy whispered loudly at her. Just follow my lead. Crazy drunk people are way less suspicious than crazy non-drunk people. Oh man, this is crazy, but I am down, said Salas. The first mate strode purposefully over to the crew and yanked them back from the gunwale. She looked down at the Brunch Club and shouted, You! Fuck off! Do you like to party? Diesa shouted back up to her. The first mate turned without answering and walked away to tend to her ship's repairs. Too bad, said Diesa as she started rowing back to the island. She was kind of hot. It was near dark. A fire warmed the common room. Dinner was over, and Jory excused himself. He went outside, heading to the outhouse. Salas smiled, waiting a few moments, then got up to open the door. She motioned the others over, but put a finger to her lips, telling them to stay quiet. A few minutes later, they heard a shriek, and Jory screamed, What? How? Oh, no. Ugh. What did you do? Drusilla asked. I cast an illusion on the toilet to make the hole look like it was a few inches over, Salas said proudly. Oh, that's just evil, Alora laughed. They heard the outhouse door slam. They peered through their lighthouse door and watched the silhouette of Jory waddle down to the shore with his pants around his ankles. When they saw him walking back, they ran to their seats. Jory walked in. He had a confused look on his face. His shirt was wrapped around his waist to cover him modestly. He clutched his pants in his hand. They dripped with seawater. What happened? Salas asked, trying to keep a straight face. I think the lighthouse is still haunted, he said, his voice a little shaky. The toilet moved. Ooh, that sounds scary, Drusilla cooed. You poor thing. Sounds shitty, said Diesa. I'm just gonna go to bed, the confused halfling said as he trudged upstairs to his room. They waited until they heard his door close, then let their laughter escape them. Salas held out her hand so they could all place 5 silver pieces in her palm. Worth every copper, Diesa smiled. The next morning they sat in front of Saberhagen, eagerly waiting for him to scry on Captain Santiago. The cat stared into the bowl, the water, his eyes, and his collar all glowed the same light green color. They saw his pupils widen as the image began to coalesce. Captain Santiago was running through the woods. He was running fast. His face was bloody. Saberhagen couldn't tell if the blood was from wounds or the branches he was ignoring in his panic. The image zoomed out. There were only 2 others with him. They also had panic in their eyes. Their clothes were stained with blood, and they all seemed to have at least minor injuries. But it was not enough to slow them down. I guess it didn't go so well, said Diesa. What now? Asked Salas. I don't know. Maybe once they reach the ship, they'll just sail away, said Drusilla. Or they'll want to know who sent them up there to get slaughtered, muttered Alora. We need to find out what happened and if they killed any of the gnolls. I agree, said Diesa. We should intercept them as soon as possible, before any of their crew goes looking for them. They thanked Saberhagen and hurried back to the lighthouse to get supplies before heading into the forest. When Jory went to his room to get his gear, he noticed something shiny resting in the middle of his bed. It was his spatula. Our tale will continue in episode 40. Episode 39 was written by Dominic White, Bethany Powers, and myself, Brian Messmer. The recording of our D&D game session that inspired this episode will be available on our podcast channel this Thursday under the name Brunch Club Live. Additional role-playing contributions to the story by Bethany Powers, who plays Diesa, J.P. Black, who plays Drusilla, Liz Richard, who plays Alora, Anna Flemke, who plays Salas, and Dominic White, who plays Jory. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by sharing it with your friends and rating and reviewing us on your favorite podcast platform. We'd really appreciate it. More information about Rescued by Dragons and ways to support and follow us can be found at rescuedbydragons.com. Thank you for listening, and please join me next week to see what my players' choices and the roll of the dice have in store.
while he's fishing.
You're going over to the pirate ship, aren't you?
Wait, what's everyone else doing? Can I set a
knitting.
trap for Jory just to fuck with him?
A box of nails.
I'm gonna set a trap for Jory in the lighthouse.
What is it? What's the trap?
Just one of those like little ropes that then would hang him upside down when he trips it up.
Just to fuck with him.
Just to fuck with him. I'm going to.
I'm gonna. Or teaching him how to be tough and observant. So maybe.
Yeah, and he's gonna have to figure out how to escape on his own. So I'm gonna put some mead to lure him in.
Oh my god.
Somewhere when he reaches for the mead.
Oh my god.
This is gonna work.
It's
so
articulate.
Well.
And
This is gonna work so
well
well.
planned.
Can you roll a...
Jason knows traps. I
It's
don't.
like a
It's
dexterity
not my
check
fault.
to set this type of...
A dexterity
God.
check?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a 14
assist,
on my
right?
fishing roll, by the way.
Ooh.
You're knitting.
I am knitting.
Total.
Priorities.
Okay. You managed to catch like 4 or 5 good sized
Oh, sweet.
cod. I think that would be catchable, like
Cod,
off
bass,
half
You
a
don't
mile
know
off
anything
the
about
coast. I don't know. I think
cod or bass,
Salmon.
possibly dogfish.
a lot. You did catch some dogfish. You had to throw them back
Doggos.
because they're gross. They're like little mini sharks.
Mm-hmm. They're cute though.
Yeah, they don't taste good from what I've heard.
Yeah.
So you do manage to catch like 4 or 5 good size. I mean, for you, they're like this big. For a normal person, they're like
Still.
Decent. For a cat, though? Dope.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a couple for Cat, couple for us. I'll fry them up tonight. Hey guys, and I come walking back into the lighthouse. Guys, I got a bunch of fish. Some for Saberhagen, some for us. Is that mead?
What was your trap?
Hi.
Sal's just on there. Best of the
Wait,
best.
it was just dexterity, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the other room going,
Fine.
what?
Yeah.
We're so
Everyone
mean.
be quiet. I'm making potions.
so mean.
Is that
Don't
mead?
yell.
Somebody left their mead. Hey, somebody left their mead here.
It's not you. Quiet. I'm snapping.
Joy, you can clearly see that the meat is left in is neatly framed by a piece of rope.
James is
Hey.
just like probably kind of drunk and just like.
Jory walks by and thinks, Diesa, you left your mead here.
Oh, Jory, you can just have it. I'm clearly no. I don't need it. You can have
Okay,
it.
I'll come back and get it after I fillet these.
Can Deesa
So
be
he's-
so drunk that she gets caught in her own trap?
Desa, make a
This is why D&D is the best game ever.
make a wisdom saving throw.
Fuck, dude.